And now thank all of you for taking the time to be here this evening to share your insights and your willingness to enhance your teaching pedagogy. We know that 2022 is shaping up to continue the challenges that many students and educators across the country have experienced since the start of the pandemic. And through all of these challenges, teachers have been putting in extra work to support their kids. So we're here today to create a space for educators to share their expertise and learn how to expand their teacher toolkit in regards to building relationships and social emotional learning. Also want to say that SEL also happens to be one of the key tenets of E4E's national policy agenda. So our first objective is to discuss the importance of SEL and its role in closing equity gaps. We also plan to share practical strategies for how to incorporate SEL practices and cultivate students' sense of belonging. And lastly, we want to see how along a free teacher tool supports educators to make each student feel seen and understood. Okay, so now we're ready to start to dig into SEL. And to kick things off, I would like to introduce E4E teacher member, Leona Fowler. Leona is a middle school special education instructional support teacher in New York City. And now I will hand it off to Leona to guide us in our opening question. Thanks, Leona.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to dive into why this and social emotional learning is just so dynamic and the timing is so perfect. And I want us to get our minds on to thinking about this question. What would it look like if classrooms were centered around relationships? And not only what would it look like, what would it feel like, if classrooms were centered around relationships? What are the signs you would know that your classroom is centered, or your ideal classroom is centered around a relationship? If relationships were the key, if that was the heart, and feel free to go ahead and begin to start filling in your thoughts. I think that's going to be on the Nearpod, right? Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so a classroom centered around relationship. Just brain dump. What would that look like and feel like?
Not to put you on the spot, Leona, but since while everyone's entering in their thoughts, what does that look like to you? What does a classroom that is centered around relationships look like?
Trust. You can definitely feel when trust is involved in a room. It has a smooth flow, a zen feel to the room. It's a collaborative space. And that's when like, okay, we're relational in here. We feed off of each other's energy. My thoughts kind of like, even if I'm in special ed, so we have paraprofessionals. Very, very big deal in District 75 here in New York City. We have paraprofessional support in the classroom with our students within my district, which is one of the most challenging districts in New York City for students with multiple disabilities, ranging from that emotional side to the behavioral to the very low functioning cognitively. So I need to make sure we're in a collaborative space. I need to make sure my parents trust my judgment and that I trust theirs. So I would say relationship for me is that sense of trust in my room, and you'll feel that energy when you walk in. So I think some answers are coming in, right, Susan? Do you see that also?
Yeah, and a lot of the same things that you were talking about, Leona, like you can tell that the trust is there. It feels active, kids are engaged, they want to be there, right?
Absolutely. And I'm looking on Nearpod here. We have, it would feel inviting. Absolutely inviting. Just like you said, active engagement, comfortable, authentic, real. I love it. Community. Yes. Commitment to a shared experience. Oh, someone's with me with that trust thing right there. Conversations will be made thinking about how the people in the room would feel and respond. And that's really big, especially in my setting, my school setting, having a lot of adults in one room. The culture will be welcoming. Everyone could feel like they could participate. Low floor, high ceiling tasks. We have higher engagement, and students have access to other people's experiences. That goes along with cultural relevant pedagogy. It will be lively. I'm such an actress when I was in the classroom, and even when I'm just doing coverages and popping in and out supporting educators. Lively is my thing. And kids will be talking with each other about work and supporting and accepted. Thank you everyone for your engagement in this. This is awesome. Prompt critical conversations and students can be who they are. That's awesome. Thank you everyone for your participation in that opening question.
I'm going to go ahead and share a big idea that is going to come as no surprise to all of us, based on what we just shared, right? Which is like, when students feel connected, feel that connection to their teacher, they feel connected to the work, they feel connected to their class and their community, they just show up differently. And that's exactly what we just surfaced in the comments, right? Interestingly enough, one survey of more than 3,000 students, grade 6 through 12, actually found that what students experience every single day in their relationships in their schools matters for their motivation to learn, and for their aspirations for the future. However, the school survey also found that too few students actually feel like they belong in their school, or they actually feel like they can be their full selves at school. And research has also shown that there are four learner mindsets that are particularly important for students to be successful in school. And we actually just surfaced quite a few of these. And the mindsets are things like, do I feel like I belong here? Do I feel like I can succeed? Do I feel like my ability and my competence actually grow with my effort? Growth mindset, right? And as a student, do I feel like this work has value for me? And what we know is that how true these statements actually feel in a classroom determines how likely students are to focus their attention on learning and to persevere when they have challenging tasks. If students feel like any of these things are not true, for example, they feel like they don't belong or they can't be successful, makes them more likely to disengage from learning. In other words, relationships impact both non-academic outcomes like physical and mental health, social emotional development, identity development, as well as academic outcomes. We all know that relationships matter. We know that supporting students' social emotional development is important. Frankly, it's why we're all here. But the challenge is like, how do we do that? How do we develop those impactful relationships with all of our students? How do we support their social emotional development and really prioritize it alongside academics? And for me, as a former educator, where do we even start? How do we help students have a sense of belonging and build an intentional community and welcoming culture in our classroom? And how do we do it every single day? Not that first week of school when everybody talks about those sense of belonging and activities and culture, but every single day in an ongoing way, as opposed to something that we just focus on. So I actually want to welcome Shirley into the conversation and really talk about how they play an important role in her classroom and how she prioritizes SEL.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Shirley Jones-Luke. I am a teacher in Boston. I teach at a high school in Dorchester. I'm an English teacher, and I enjoy being a member of E4E. So this afternoon, we're talking about social emotional learning. And my piece on that would be that you need to create an oasis in the classroom. First and foremost, the students need to feel a sense of comfort when they enter your classroom. And that's key to anything that you're trying to accomplish in the classroom. When my students walk in, they know that they're in a safe space. They can be themselves, they can share, they can collaborate, they can learn and grow together. It's important for them to have an oasis, because sometimes students struggle in a particular subject area. But even if they struggle in English, when they come to my classroom, they know that they'll get the help and support that they need from their peers as well as from me, and that they'll be encouraged to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So again, social emotional learning is important. It needs to be a part of the school day, as someone said earlier, not just that first week of the new school year, but every day, 180 days from September 1st to June 1st. It needs to be a part of the student's classroom experience in all classes, and it needs to be incorporated into the lessons. So I feel that it's very important that students have a space in each and every classroom where they can talk about issues that concern them and not worried about being graded, but feel that they've learned something and they're better prepared to handle any challenges that come their way. Thank you.
No, ma'am, thank you. And I think something that you said really resonated with me in that I think the pandemic shone a light on this, right? On this need to connect with kids and be able to support kids in that way. It existed before, but the pandemic just shone a light on it and helped us focus on it. And I actually want us to take a little bit of a deeper dive and do some crowdsourcing, because as a former teacher, I know that we learn best from each other. How many times I picked something else up off the copy machine that someone had left behind and used it in my own classroom. And that's kind of what we're going to do here today, which is just let's get interactive. I want to think about what are some actions, big or small, that we all take in our classrooms to help students feel that sense of belonging. How do we cultivate that classroom culture? It could be a teacher ninja move. It could be a strategy. It could be an activity. But I want us to take about 3 minutes and share some of those moves and ideas. Again, in the Nearpod. And I'm actually going to start us off. I'll type it in just a minute, but I want to encourage us to think, it doesn't have to be some big thing. Standing at the door and greeting students with a smile and saying their name is a way to create a sense of belonging and to help students feel like you actually want them to be there. And in Zoom, it works very similar. As they come on, you welcome them to the Zoom and smile, right? That genuine smile and that eye contact. What are some actions that we all take in our own classrooms? I'd love to see some added here. I love it. Leona's like, smile. It seems so simple and people forget to do it. And it makes students feel so welcome. I think too, like actually listen. And that I'm not trying to sound like derogatory in that way, but I used to be typing at my desk thinking I was listening to a student who was standing beside me. And I actually wasn't. And so like stop typing, turn, actually look, make that eye contact and listen. And that conveys so much to students as well. I love it. Enthusiastic, pay attention to days that matter for them. I love music. My colleague JBF is the king of the right opening music. He actually sent me a song before this webinar to kind of get me pumped. So same idea. Celebrations. We used to have dance parties. Anybody else do dance parties? Like 3 minutes of dance time. Yep. Check in. How are students doing? Greet them by name. Yes, I love it. Tell them you missed them. Someone noticed when you were out. These are all so great. Love, love, love. All of these things that we are doing is actually based in learning science and brain science. I point that out because sometimes we do things and we don't even realize, like we just think that's a great idea when there's grounded in reality. Like the smiling actually stimulates part of a student's brain and helps them calm down and be able to listen. It creates that feeling for them. And so I also want to show a free tool. I'm getting ready to share my screen and demo along. I'm super excited. That we designed to support educators, specifically to make it easier for teachers to develop those supportive relationships with students, with all of their students. You know, when I think about equity and how do we make equity a priority, equity means everyone. How do we know and see and support everyone? And that starts with all. In fact, I'm not sure if all of you are aware, it's a big celebration for us at Along. It's National Mentoring Month. And the science is super clear about students who have one strong connection with an adult in their life, whether you formally call them a mentor or not, makes all the difference for them. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Awesome. Well, hopefully I'm sharing the correct screen, and right now you can see it says, "Welcome to the library, Ms. Along." For today, I will be playing the part of Ms. Along. And I want to show you this tool that we've built to help support teachers and just show you how easy it is. So essentially, we wanted to think about how relationships start. Relationships start with a question. And so we reached out to partners like Search Institute and said, can you help us think about what kinds of questions we can ask students, what kinds of questions that we can give to teachers to help them get to know students, to help them express care and provide support to students, to help them share power, really the elements important in a developmental relationship. And they said, yeah, sure, no problem. Questions? And we also thought about what might teachers need to help them think about using this tool. So for example, question, what do you like to do with your friends, your family, with others in your life? And if I click on it, I can see why I might want to use this with my students, when I might want to use it with my students. It says use this when you want to know more about your students' lives outside the classroom. And students can benefit from more awareness of how they connect with others. And that this can help students identify activities they enjoy doing with others, like adults or peers, which can help them build their sense of belonging and attachment. So I'm just going to pick this question. And I'm actually going to share my own reflection with my students. So if you haven't realized yet, I have dual screens, now you know. And so I'm going to try to look here instead of here. But what we know is that students want to know us as humans as well. If we want to know them, relationships go both ways. And if I want my students to share, reflect with me, then I need to model that for them. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. So we have some light talking points that teachers can use to get the conversation started if they'd like. And so I'm going to get ready and share a reflection. So with my students, I might say something like, you know what, we all have activities that we like to do with others in our life. For instance, I really enjoy cooking and preparing and eating a really good meal. And I love doing that with my boys. You know, my boys have gotten older now. My oldest is 21, my baby is 18, and they like to help me cook in the kitchen. And it's just been really fun to do that with them. How about you? What's something you enjoy doing with others in your life? I can't wait to hear. And then I would send that out to my students. I'm not going to record, but I want you to be able to see what it would look like. So I am going to get a picture really quick to be able to do that. And then I'm ready to send this to my students. So my students would see my video reflection. I can even add an optional note here. I can't wait to hear from you guys. And I can send it to all of the students that I'm working with. So maybe it's my homeroom. It's my advisory group. It's one section of students. And I can send that right now to them, or I can schedule it and I can say to my students, you know what, guys, I'm going to share a new reflection with you every single Tuesday. And so you can look for that on Tuesdays, and I can't wait to hear back from you. And then I would go ahead and schedule that and know that on Tuesday it's going to go out for my students. When my students share their reflections with me, they have three options. They can also record a video reflection. And as we've learned, some students aren't comfortable with that in the beginning. So students also have the option just to type their reply to me. They can also do an audio reflection. And students have said to us, having that choice feels really important and really empowering to them. So I could just come in, watch Ian's reflection. I can type a response back just to, kind of close that loop and say, I heard what you said. Thank you so much for sharing with me. And then I can either close out that reflection, or I could continue. Maybe I want to continue this conversation with Ian a little bit. So I have the option to do that. And I can also take some notes just for me about things that I've learned about Ian over time. Maybe I add today's date, and I can save those to come back to later. And the last thing I'll show you is just information for teacher, which I think is super important. Students have said to us they don't want this to feel like one more assignment or one more requirement, something they have to do. And when you think about it, it's hard to force a relationship on someone. So what they've said is, ask us to share with you. And what we've seen is that usually when the teacher shares their own reflection and shows how excited she is to learn about students are going to reply. But there may be some reflection questions that students aren't quite sure about, and that's okay too. So here I can see all of the questions that my students have replied to. Maybe I want to follow up with Andrew and say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'd love to hear from you. And then I can also see a reflection history over time from my students. So I could go back and see or listen to any reflections that Ian has sent. I can see any notes that I've taken about Ian, just ways to jog my memory over time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and love to take us back to the Nearpod so that I can share with you all, if you're interested in Along, how you can find out more about it. So Along is free. It's free for all educators in the United States who have a teacher email, basically. And you can access Along or learn more about it just by visiting along.org. And then as a part of my job, what I try to do is think about what is every single thing that a teacher might need in order to get started. Well, she might need a slide deck presentation to introduce her students to Along and to get them logged in. Great, I made that. She might need a one-pager to send home to parents or to others. Great, I made that too. So on our resources page are a lot of resources designed just to get teachers started with Along. And then, as I said before, anybody can create a free account. You're encouraged to do that or reach out for support if you'd like to learn more about Along. And I think, Eric, I'm tossing it back to you.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna close us out. So thank you so much, Susan, for sharing along.org with us. I think it's a really cool tool. I hope that all of y'all will consider trying it out and using it. So thanks to everyone else for being here today too. Really appreciate you being intentional with your time and sharing it with us. I hope the event was valuable to you and that you have at least one new takeaway that you can use in your class tomorrow. I also want to thank our teacher leaders, Leona and Shirley. Shirley had to leave a second early, for joining us today, and also for their really deep dedication to creating an education system that works for everyone. Really appreciate your work, Leona. Thank you. Yeah, and I do just want to thank the along.org team again for their commitment to empowering an underpowered educational system to work for the students of today and tomorrow. Really appreciate it. Finally, we'd love to hear your feedback on this afternoon session.